Welcome to the new Rainmaker Podcast, a weekly show for visionary founders and team members alike to come together and share the heartfelt, the cringe, and the radically honest truths about what it's really like to build and work for some of the world's most exposed brands on the biggest internet stages. I'm your host, Veronica Romney, and after working for some of the biggest names in the online space myself, I've learned that it takes both leadership and dream team collaboration to truly scale a company to its greatest potential. You can build a business alone, but you cannot scale it on your own. And my goal on today's episode and every episode is to inspire our dreamers and empower our leaders. Make sure to follow and share my podcast with your friends and colleagues, and feel free to tag me on Instagram at vromney with your insights and ahas. Now let's make it rain on today's episode. Jessica, welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast.
Hi, Veronica. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm super excited. You guys, you don't even understand the guest that we have today, and I won't spoil the surprise, but your experience is bananas. And not only is it bananas, it's bananas in an area that everybody desperately wants to improve upon, which is sales. And you've done it at some of the highest levels in some of the most competitive arenas. So I cannot wait to pick your brain. I hope you're prepared. But to level set the room, will you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Jessica Marx, and I founded one of the top advisory firms for 6- and 7-figure female entrepreneurs about 5 years ago with 6-month-old brand new twins. So I'm a mom to boy-girl twins that are right around the same age as my company. I had just come off a 9-year sprint as a healthcare executive where I was the head of national sales and corporate strategy for a multi-billion-dollar startup that I was involved in from the very beginning. And we had a national sales team in the United States and Puerto Rico of just over 500. And so as the company grew, we realized, which some of you may even start to see this in your small business, that there's typically a disconnect between corporate home office headquarters and the sales division, the boots on the ground, the one that's generating the revenue for the company. And because we were in the healthcare space, we were calling on a multiple different opportunities with physicians in different fields. And we started to realize there needed to be somebody that could bridge the gap, that could be in home office and at our headquarters 50% of the time, and then also in the field, seeing what was actually happening day to day. Since we were first to market with the product we were selling, we were really trailblazing the path. So we didn't have somebody else's business model to go off of. And it was definitely a unique position because I not only was able to oversee the commercial operations team working closely with our COO, but I then reported directly to our CEO and board of directors with the initiatives and then made it tangible for our sales team. Flash forward, now I work with women that typically fall into the small business sector. And so they may be in charge of their own sales, or they may only have 1 to 2 people on their team that are generating sales for them. But a lot of the same philosophies, the same implementation, the same requirements apply to a small business as a large business. So I come in as an advisor and help them achieve that and really build a sustainable business that allows them to become a hands-off CEO.
Okay, hold on.
I know and that's the short version.
Yeah.
I
was just gonna say, especially if you're listening and you've never worked in a corporate environment, a lot of that language, right? Like a home office and all those things. God, that just like brought me back to even my corporate sprint, because working for publicly traded companies or really aggressively or privately funded companies, that's a lot of doing things and reporting up and justifying everything and every penny sometimes, right? So you've done it in one of the most competitive industries, healthcare. Mm-hmm. You personally oversaw a team of, I'm sorry, did you say 500?
We had over 500 in our sales division, plus that home office that I was also in charge of through leadership.
Okay, I have some questions, because here's how I see you. I see you as this Sherpa, this guide who has literally climbed the sales of Mount Everest and
Mhm.
now has come down the mountain with the elixir of life and is trying to impart it on 6 and 7 figure self-started, self-funded business entrepreneurs. And that's I mean, number one, thank you. Thank you for sharing the elixir of knowledge and good and imparting it to others, because most of us, especially if you're an entrepreneur, we're not going to have a team of 500 people realistically whatsoever. We're going to have a team of ourselves. We're usually the first salesperson to learn it, maybe wrestle with it, tell ourselves we're not good at it, but really it's us. And then there's the aspiration to like offload it as soon as possible, right? So let me ask you this, because my first question is, at what point does a business owner know or discern that the time has come to relinquish sales to another person?
You should start your business knowing that you cannot be the only person generating sales for your company. And whether I have somebody come to me as a client and they may only have a VA or an operations manager or maybe an outsourced marketing person, I am always asking them, how are you incentivizing this person to help grow the business?
Mhm.
And everyone on your team should have some type of compensation built into their structure, where they are out at a party, if they were at a dinner or a networking event, and they are talking about your company and they are pitching how amazing it is to work with you, that they get some percentage of that contract. So they are out there just as much as you are talking about this business. You cannot do it alone. And I think a lot of people go into entrepreneurship of, I'm just going to be a freelancer or I'm
Mhm.
going to be a solopreneur. And that's fine if you are okay having $100,000 business, maybe 200 at most. But anything beyond that, you cannot do alone. And so as you build out that team, how comfortable are you getting them with the art of selling? And that truly is just building relationships, being able to effectively communicate what the company does and the results that you get. And even if you are the only person delivering the services, you don't need to be the only person selling.
Mm. Okay, so there has to be a belief change. There has to be a paradigm shift, a mind shift. Because for me, Jessica, I like experience this too. Because obviously, what I'm doing is I'm training and developing marketing rainmakers, like somebody else besides you, the CEO, who can manage one of either one of or the most revenue generating arm of the business, right? And the fear is in the relinquish, like, oh my gosh, it's my pocketbook and I'm literally handing some the control to someone else to fill my said pocketbook, and that is very unsafe, or it feels dangerous sometimes. So okay, I hear what you're saying and I say it too, like you can start a business on your own but you can't scale it on your own. Like you have to have party people come to your party. Who do I look for? Because you said assistant, you said ops, like, and I mean, it's really popular in the industry right now. Let me also add this caveat for like social sellers. But I'm curious from your perspective, like what kind of person would you look for a sales team member?
Well, I think it's all relevant too in what type of company you're running and
Hmm.
what price point your services are marketed at, correct? Because if you are selling high ticket, a junior level social media TikToker might not be the right fit if you are selling high ticket or luxury. But at the same time, you may have that higher ticket luxury service where you need somebody who truly understands that can communicate and build relationships on that level. Not many people can. And so I find that people create a budget or they create a job description on what they've seen out there, and it has nothing to do with their industry or their model or what's going to get them the highest return on that headcount investment. And when you said you work with a lot of business owners that don't want to relinquish that control or relinquish somebody else doing the selling for them, I would say that 80% of female business owners out there right now do not feel comfortable selling or not great at it. They don't understand it. They've never invested into it. And so, purely what's getting them sales is a passion for what they're doing. Now, if you could put somebody in that role that actually understands it, can give it the time that is needed, and can build those relationships, especially because this does not happen overnight with high ticket. And these are relationships that have to be cultivated for sometimes a year, 2 years before somebody makes that large investment. You don't have the time, nor is that where you're going to be in your zone of genius. If you are a true entrepreneur that understands business, you are most likely a visionary. So you are coming up with the ideas, you are coming up with where the company wants to go, and then you need the action takers, the doers that are going to get you there.
Preach. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I literally, that's like the song I play to go to sleep at night. That's literally how I view the world as well. And you're right, there is a different dynamic between female entrepreneurs and male entrepreneurs. So I don't disagree with you there. And I'm not saying that in any way to be stereotypical or sexist. It's just in my work or in the last 15 years of doing what I'm doing, I certainly can see particular trends or limiting beliefs that I think my female counterparts also struggle with, because sales can feel icky as opposed to serving, right?
Yes. And I think, kind of for what we were just talking about too, I've seen in the online space people try to hire traditional sales reps
Mm-hmm.
been in a sales force. And this is a completely different world, a completely different opportunity. And I can't look at any of the sales reps that were truly boots on the ground, that were calling on practices, going into doctors' offices, that had high commission incentives, that understood having a small specific territory or region to then put them on into the online space. They're not going to be successful. And so really understanding what like online or service-based sales is versus those going out and selling a product that need to be at trade shows, need to be at conferences, going into larger accounts, having those micro accounts as well, the balance of business, it's just completely different. And if you can't communicate that effectively in what this role requires, then you will continue to hire people that will not succeed in this role.
Okay, can we talk about this for a second? Because I have a corporate background, you have a corporate background. I feel like corporate marketing is very different than marketing in the wild, wild west of the online space,
Mhm.
right? And you also just hit on that too, right? Selling in a traditional or corporate infrastructure to B2B or corporate clients or whatever is very different than when you're selling either directed to consumer or aspiring online entrepreneurs as well, that you're trying to like pitch your products, your high ticket, your services. What would you say is some of the biggest differences that you notice between selling in one arena type and selling in the wild, wild west of the online space? I'm curious.
Yes. So, as somebody who oversaw the sales division, I knew that there was going to be turnover, whether voluntary or involuntary. And so, when we looked at a territory or a specific city and we were filling that position, we were filling it based off of the numbers, what it needed, the demographic of clientele. But yes, did some of our reps have relationships with the doctors or the physicians? Absolutely. But if for some reason they left the company and a new rep came in, they were married to the product that we were selling. And so we could backfill that pretty easily. We could train somebody, get them up and running, and they could go. And we were always filling the bench, right? When you're working with smaller businesses, and maybe I only have a team of 5 or 7, and my clients or prospective leads are getting to know that team and they start to become the face of the brand, that becomes really important because you lose that person or you lose that momentum, you don't have this bench lined up of like junior sales associates or customer service reps that you can easily push into that role. And so I think that if you try to train a person within your small organization like you would in a larger organization, it's going to fail. It will absolutely fail. I would never recommend that. And I even think as you start to build out a sales force, those initial 10 to 20 that you bring on are going to be trained completely differently than the 4 to 500th rep that you bring on within the organization. Because at that point, things are done on such a mass scale.
Mm.
And if you are in the wild, wild west of the online space, which I do think we're going to see a cleansing of that soon, which is going to be a good thing, you want this person to understand how do you build relationships? How do you lean into the results that we get our clients that no one else out there can get? There's a lot of noise right now, and I would be challenging this person to focus on how do we rise above the noise and get out of this mess of 20,000 competitors to really we're in a class of one or maybe a class of five even. And what makes people just want to work with us so badly that when they get on the phone with you, they're already pretty much a yes
Mm-hmm.
at that
Mm-hmm.
point.
Yeah, at that point, they're a yes. They just want to hear you say that you think that they're a yes. It's like that validation is what I often find on some of the calls or post application calls or things like that. So I don't disagree. Okay, can we? Because oh gosh, my brain's going 100 miles an hour, and I'm like, can you see me writing my little notes and questions because I want to ask you so many things. So I don't disagree. The SOPs, the system, the processes, the the manual that you would need to have developed to get to even a 400, 500 person sales team. I mean, like you guys are dialed in. Like you said, you're just changing out that roster. It's, it's the NBA. Jessica, I have a question for you because here's a gap that I often find when you are the business, right? Like, remember in those like solopreneurship days, like when you literally are everything. You're the marketer, you're the salesperson, you're the ops person, fulfillment, everything, right? You're the bookkeeper. And then you start to bring people to the party and you start to let go and relinquish. But like you were talking about earlier, especially with our beloved, I love you female entrepreneurs, but they tend to struggle with this more, right? Is when
Mhm.
he or she who sees themselves in the mirror and says, I'm not good at sales. I need to hire that person to compensate for my weakness. But then how does that person who finds himself weak in an area then train somebody to be great in the same area? Like, do you go, you know what? It shouldn't be you training them. If you don't think that you're good, if you're great at it, then how can you transfer like mediocre? Or is that when you bring on somebody to develop that person for you or buy a course or curriculum certification? Like, how do we bridge the gap between somebody who says, I'm not good at this, but I need somebody to be great at this and I'm responsible for their onboarding and training?
So I would have a couple pieces of advice. One is I find that female entrepreneurs, and I say female entrepreneurs because I don't see a lot of men struggle in this area, have a very hard time communicating the long-term vision of their company. And if you can't communicate the vision to the team can't make the vision happen. And so, one of the things I would say is first, you need to invest in yourself and hire an advisor to develop your skill set. How do you know if somebody's doing great at sales if you don't understand it yourself? And this could go for sales, this could go for the financials in the company. If you want to scale and grow, it is not okay to say, I just don't understand this side of the business, so I'm not going to know it. And sales is going to be a critical piece of that. You can't develop a compensation plan for your salesperson if you don't even know what metrics to go off of. What is tangible? What is actually realistic in a year? How much have you been able to do? Where are you looking to go? What are you forecasting and projecting? And so if you're unclear on that piece, you are not ready to hire. The second part of that is if you are hiring somebody that doesn't know what to do, you're hiring within a budget that is unrealistic and you need to increase the budget in order to be able to get somebody in this role that knows what they're doing. I hear people say all the time, like, I can save a few dollars here, per hour and hire somebody, and then I'm just going to train them. If you don't know how to do it, how are you going to train somebody else to do it? And if you're hiring to get something off of your plate, whatever that may be, you better be hiring an expert to do it or somebody that has a really good understanding because you will constantly be holding their hand if they don't know what they're doing and you're having to teach it. So if I'm outsourcing something or I'm bringing somebody on, it's because we are going somewhere where we have never been before and I need somebody to help get us there and I'm going to give them the vision in order for us to do that.
Ooh, I really like you fired up, by the way. Just saying, like I'm seeing your hands flying. I'm here for it so much.
My coaching style too, like I just get really in the zone and my goal is always, and if anyone's ever worked with me, they will validate this. I don't want to tell you what to think. I want to tell you how to think because I can't be with you in your business for the next 10 to 15 years.
Mm.
It's not healthy for you and it's not healthy for me. So the goal is when clients come to work with us, and this should be the goal of every service-based business owner, that we are giving them the tools that they will be able to run with for whatever they're currently doing and whatever happens in the future for them. And so I get in the zone, I get fired up, I get excited because I want it to be impactful, even on a podcast.
Well, I love that because I think that's a true guide, a true mentor, true coach, consultant, Sherpa. Like it's almost like them graduating from you is like your form of status. Like you did it. Like yeah. I love that actually a lot because I think sometimes the industry gets a bad rep because coaches want people to be dependent on them and never leave, and then they never get the results. And you're like, nope, results first. And that if the result is first and forward for us, that means you might even graduate for me, right? Like, which is what you want.
Yes. And I am always transparent that, my goal is to have you in and out in 6 months.
Yeah.
For everybody, is that the case? No, because I do have clients that are scaling by the millions, and then they come into more of a premier client role with me where I am a strategic advisor in their company on an annual basis. They're reserving me for the entire year as like a board of directors. But for the most part, I want you to be able to come in and run with it. That may mean coming back when you decide to bring on new revenue streams or launch a new company.
Right.
But I don't want to keep you around forever. That's boring for me. I want new, exciting. Like I want you to fly the nest. It's a lot like having kids. Like when my kids turn 18, it's time to go on to they need to go on to the next thing. Like I don't want them living at home till they're 40.
Ooh, that's a really good analogy. It's exactly right. Just to help anyone that's in your care, family, personal, or clients, to be self-reliant is like as a parent that I think about even my own kids. I'm like, I don't want them living in my house in 27 in the basement. Like, no, thank you.
Because that says you are unsuccessful,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
If we're unsuccessful, if our kids don't have the resources to go out into the world and go to college and get jobs and really figure out what their life is, we can't do that living in our basements. And so business is a lot of the same. If you're somebody that's working with business owners, the goal is to get them to graduate and go on and build something very successful for themselves without us.
We'll be back with this interview right after the commercial break. Did you know that I have a free Rainmaker hiring kit? Skip the formal recruiting process and learn how to source Rainmaker applicants that are already connected to you. I'll show you how to turn a walking testimonial into a rockstar team member for free. Head to veronicarami.com or click the link in my show notes to get your hands on the free Rainmaker hiring kit. Now let's get back to the show. I want you to help me and the listeners set expectations. Because this is where I literally was just having this conversation this week in one of my Fortune Fix calls. Mm-hmm. And I had a Rainmaker, so it's a marketing Rainmaker, marketing leader, who was having one of those self-doubt moments where she's like, when I read the job description, it was like it was written for me. And then a couple weeks into the place of employment, she's like doubting herself. And I'm like, there's a gap between reading a job description and then not being provided the tools, the skills, the things necessary to achieve the job description. And instead of saying, I have not been given the training or the resources or the proper onboarding to fulfill these bullets that I was so attracted to on the sales or on the job description page, they blame themselves as being less than and not worthy of the calling. And I'm like, whoa. You not getting what you need in the onboarding process isn't a reflection of you not being fit or a match for this role, right? Can we talk about onboarding for a second? And I know that depending on what you're selling, the business model, the price point would require different caliber of individuals to represent or to serve a particular thing, which I totally honor. But like almost manage people's expectations. Like, what is a sales onboarding process? How long is it? Like, where you recommend the CEO's meeting with that salesperson for the first, 30 minutes a day. Like, if you have any tips or tricks just to manage expectations, because sometimes people bring somebody on and then leave them high and dry.
Yes, I actually think that this is the case, not just for sales, but all areas of the company where owners or founders in the initial growth phase say, I'm too busy to bring this person on, or I'm too busy to teach somebody how to do it. Well, if you're too busy now, you're always going to be too busy because this is never going to get off of your plate. And if you're somebody that is a micromanager and a control freak, you will also never succeed in this, because there comes a point where you have to let go, and that you are hiring somebody that you trust has the skill set and the judgment to be able to effectively do this job where you are not having to manage them day to day. But what I find is oftentimes they're hiring the person that has the right skill set. They've gone through this robust interview phase. They feel so confident in this person. They bring them on, the person starts, and they're like, okay, go.
Mm-hmm.
The candidate, the new employee, is like, okay, but go where,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
where I've been and where you may want to go are two completely different things. And we can't expect to just throw the vision out there and that everybody's going to understand, here's step 1 through 10 on how we're going to get there. And it really has to be an interactive conversation for months. You can't just onboard somebody in 2 weeks. And it has to be open feedback. You may be the expert in the company, but they may be the expert in what they're doing. And so I think that one of the areas where business owners can really grow is asking their team, so now that you've been here for 30 days, what have you noticed? Are there any changes that you would make? Are there any systems that we're not leveraging? Have you seen in your past things done differently that you think would work really well here? And have it be a two-way conversation. If you're not willing to do that, or you can't make the time to do that, don't hire somebody and put them in a situation where you're setting them up to fail.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I just wrote on my notes like truth bombs, minute so and so, minute so and so. Like they're so good. You're just dropping some lines, some bars over there, Jessica. But you're not wrong. It's really common to see people, or I've done this before too, with with a new employee because they're not biased yet and they have brand new eyes. Like you can see things I can't see anymore. I'm too far into. I've already seen this word too many times. So like to have a new team member do like a SWOT analysis within their first 90 days or 30 days or whatever. Just like, what do you see? I can't see anymore, right? I had a conversation with Haley Burkhead. We did a podcast where she talked about how in the first couple weeks of an employment, she basically challenges the team member to dethrone the boss. Like she invites them to criticize, like, where are we not congruent on our online presence? Where could we do better communicating X value? What could you do my webinar better than me? I mean, she like really like, go ahead, dethrone the boss. And I was like, God, like this is such a cool, it goes along with what you're saying too, that the onboarding process is a two-way street. I, as the person who's brought you into this organization, cannot abandon you. And you also are an opportunity to provide value to the organization as well in your first 30, 60, 90 days too, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, gosh, so good. Okay, so you brought up compensation, and this is a question I get a lot. I get it almost all the time. What does a typical rainmaker make? What should I be paying my rainmaker? What's fair? And I know, P.S., that this is really difficult, especially when you're hiring remote team members, because depending on where they're physically residing, I mean, there's states that are really expensive, and then there's states that are not. So, like, I'm not taking away or negating the variables of cost of living. However, I would love to have a conversation with you about pointers, tips, recommendations around compensation for sales, because it's probably the most intimidating part. And then what I see is they put people on comp plans, they don't realize the full financial ramifications. Then their people start getting paid, like, and then they go and they look at their books or their P&L and go, that's, oh, I can't afford that. And then they change the compensation and it kind of demoralizes the person. So like I've seen comp plans be like revolving doors because one, we don't know how to do it. And two, we don't realize the full future effect and ramifications financially on our books.
If I had a dollar
Here we go.
every comp meeting I had to sit in with a CEO. And I reported to quite a few CEOs. Obviously, we were acquired and transitions, and so about 4 CEOs during that time frame. But if I had a dollar for every comp meeting I had to sit in discussion where I had to argue that we are absolutely 1000% not changing the commission structure, we are not going back and revising that. That is horrible for culture. It is horrible for morale. It says we don't know what we're doing. We're going on our word. We are causing confusion. now they are unclear on how they can hit goal or make money. I mean, I would be worth a lot more than I am right now, because it's the easiest thing for a CEO or an executive or somebody who is disconnected from sales to say, well, we're just going to change the commission plan, or we're going to incentivize them differently. And it is a huge deficit to the organization, because what it does to morale and culture and the confusion that it creates, and also the lack of trust with senior leadership, will have an impact on sales greater than it will savings. And I sit down with a lot of clients who do not think an incentive comp plan would fit into their business model. And I say, I'm going to challenge you and let me show you how. And let me show you where your $50,000 a year employee who thinks that they're stuck at $50,000 a year could make 70 while bringing in an additional 400 in revenue for the company. And this is how it's done. And you would be surprised at how many people are willing to help drive sales, or are now open to talking about your business when they are out and about as an employee that maybe they just never thought about it before. They said, oh, I'm just I just do creative design for this company, or I'm a graphic designer. Now, when there's skin in the game and you say, hey, if you bring anybody to us as a client for a full rebrand, or launching a company as a startup, and we do all of their branding and logo design and all of that, we'll give you $2,000 of that $25,000 contract. Now they really start talking about you when they're out and about. And so I do think that if you are somebody that builds a comp plan or a comp structure blindly, you are going to have a huge problem. If you do it methodically with strategy, and there are stretch goals and stretch incentives for them to reach that are very lucrative, you will see some major shifts within your organization. So for example, I created an incentive comp plan. I won't say the industry because I don't want to give away who this potential client could be, but it's in an industry where this is not done. And she had never seen it done that way. And I said, I just want to challenge you that this absolutely can't be done. In her industry, this type of role typically can bring in a good person 20 to 40,000 in sales a month. With the comp structure we put in place, with the training we put in place, with the type of leadership that she's been able to build, last month, 2 of her employees generated over 100K in sales, which is not common in this industry. I mean, they exceeded any goal that we put in place. So then it was, how can we reward them outside of comp that's very memorable? And that meant sending them and their spouse on a fully paid weekend away to resorts that she knew that they had been eyeing or talking about, to have this experience that cost her maybe a few grand per person. But these people were bringing in way more than that for her business. And so also knowing when is something incentive comp and when is something a reward for going above and beyond what the role entailed.
Oh my gosh, like my brain. No, you're 100% right. And then I think all of us understand the concept of like a slot machine. If you can put a quarter in the slot machine in Vegas and get $1 out, you're going to keep playing. It's certainly how we look at Facebook ads. That's easy to do, but then it's really interesting that same lens can't, or seems to really, really struggle or challenge the mindset of the CEO when applying it to a person. Because a slot machine doesn't go on vacation with your money, but if a sales rep crushes it and they go on vacation and they post about it, it causes some feelings. And I'm not saying that, listen, there's some really healthy CEOs. I'm just being really honest that sometimes it can make a person feel a particular way when their team members seem to be thriving more than they are.
Well, I think then that would be a whole underlying mindset issue. But where I do think I could touch base on this is that with Facebook ads, with some of these other things, people can point fingers at, it's the algorithm, it's the ad company, it's whatever. When it's a person on your team that's not succeeding, or when a strategy that you've implemented all of a sudden is no longer working and you have to really turn and look at yourself. That's the gap. They're wanting to place blame on the person when in all reality, where's the conversation leading up to that? If you had a down month and you didn't immediately get in front of it and say, is the market shifting? Are we seeing economics? Was there a strategy that we were implementing that was impacted by Google, or were our emails not being like what went wrong, and getting in front of that right away, then it's a you problem as the CEO. And just because you hire somebody to take this portion of your business doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't be involved. You absolutely have to be involved. You're the owner at the end of the day. This is your problem. No matter how large the organization is. And I think that, even being a part of a huge corporate organization, at the end of the day, we all went home at night. Somebody owned that company. Somebody ultimately was winning or losing based on what the numbers were that day. And you better believe he got involved.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think that's what I think those are the things that I love about running my own business and being an entrepreneur. Me and my husband talk about all the time, like, what's the hardest thing we've ever done? Being married, having children, or being an entrepreneur, because all of them require enormous self-reflection, like enormous self-introspection, inquiry. Like, am I doing the best that I can? Because I need to qualify myself further to be successful in all three of these arenas that involve others, right? And the others are depending on me to be my best self.
Important that as entrepreneurs, you have somebody outside of your spouse, your team, your friends, that you are having some of these conversations with, or that you are learning what to do or what the mindset needs to be. I had a client send me a Voxer this morning with a situation in her business. And I said, you're not going to like what I'm about to say, but this is 1000% a you problem. You allowed the scope creep to happen. You didn't send an email saying this is going out of scope and you need to approve these additional hours. You weren't, the team was not communicating to you. So, do I think you're going to be able to go back and recoup this money? No, I don't. And because I'm able to have those honest conversations and I'm not blowing smoke, I'm saying, oh, yeah, you're right. Go back and get that money. And, you should fight this. It's why my clients succeed, because she will never do that again.
Right.
Going today and talking to her attorney about updating the contract. She's having a team meeting this morning about scope creep. I mean, that's what builds solid.
Yep.
It's easy for somebody to tell you like, oh, you're doing great, you're amazing, you're all these things. But if no one's helping you understand what you're doing wrong or where you can improve, it's the same for your team. You have to be doing that for your team.
Okay. I could talk to you forever and ever. And you, I picture you in this boardroom because you're such a beautiful person inside and out. And I can just imagine you coming in bright colors into this dark and dingy boardroom with a whole bunch of men just laying it down. That's what I picture. Okay.
Close, but I used to wear all black and navy blue. So I've ventured colors, but I will say, and this is what I tell women all the time. I know this isn't the same for everybody, but I had a seat at the table. I could say whatever I wanted. And I think it's important that more women step into that, because oftentimes that is the case. Yet we build this story in our mind that it's not. And so if you allowed yourself to say the uncomfortable things to your clients, to your team, to have the difficult conversations, to say what you truly want to say, be amazed at what happens for not just the business growth, but you as an individual.
You're amazing. And I feel like you're amazing. And I can tell that we just barely scratched the surface of what you have to impart and how the depth of the well of knowledge and human capital that you possess to work and help somebody take their business to levels they're not even aware of yet outside of themselves. Where can people learn more about you, your services, what you do? Because I could probably pitch you for an hour for you, but I want people to explore and get to know you as much as I have loved getting to know you.
Yes, you can find me at thejessicamarks.com. Same on Instagram as thejessicamarks. And I love connecting with business owners in the DMs. I'm not on TikTok or Facebook or any of those other things, but I try to hang out on Instagram and really be able to answer questions, connect, love being on podcasts. And so connect with me. Let me know that you heard me on this show too, because I love to hear where people find me.
Well, thank you, Jessica, for coming onto the Rainmaker podcast today.
Thank you, Veronica.
Thanks for listening to the Rainmaker podcast. We believe you can't get real results or have real relationships that last without being real first. If you resonated with today's episode, leave us a review so we can keep serving up the truth and tips that help you become the empowered leader that I know that you are. And always head over to veronicarami.com to check out all the free resources I have for you and the show notes from this episode. Until next time, my friends.